Hi, this is Cheryl for Bayer's Pampered Stampers. I am so excited today to show you this wonderful new product that Melissa has just gotten into the shop. It's from a company you may not have heard from before called Rinea. Rinea makes this wonderful foiled paper. And while we haven't seen it used that much in paper crafting and probably haven't had a lot of personal experience with it, it's been around for a while. Those who make kind of the old-fashioned, larger foiled paper flowers and some things like that have probably used it, but I'm not sure it's been in our marketplace before. In any event, I created a couple of cards using the product and really trying to show you some of the fun things that it will do. This is one, it's kind of a masculine birthday card. The second card is one that has some really stringy little flowers here. Hopefully you can see those okay. I'm going to bring it just a little bit closer for you and try and get it out of the glare. And then the third one, those were all done primarily with the foiled paper. With this one, I only used foiled paper as an accent to make the little flowers. So super, super easy product to work with. Bear with me a minute here. I've got a lot of stuff on my table because I want to show you so much with this. I'm not going to go over how to do the cards. If you have any questions on that, get a hold of me through Melissa, and I'm happy to walk you through. But I really want to show you the product. The foiled paper comes basically in two flavors. This is one of them. They call it glossy. It's the shiny metallic paper. It's usually one color on one side and a second color on the other. So both sides of it are usable, and if an edge pops up or something like that, it's not an issue. It tears very easily. You can see that there. I'm going to show you more with that later. The other sort of flavor of the Rinea foils is this patterned, or they call it, I think, starstruck. I'm going to make sure I get this right as I reach for the packages I want to show you next. It's called starstruck, so it's got this pattern in it. Usually the starstruck are the same color front and back. Sometimes the glossy are that way too, although this one you can see is kind of the blue color on the front and gold on the back. It comes in packages generally of 12. This is the small size, which is 4x6. I think this is mostly what Melissa got in at this time, just so that we can try it out and see if we really like it. I really think you're gonna. It is just an awesome product to work with. And then the other size, is 6x12. It's not wanting to go in frame. But with both sizes, they kind of package it either in kind of an ombre like this one's done. It's called Shades of Blue, and they've got midnight, cobalt, sapphire, and turquoise in here. Or this one is just a variety pack called Formal, and this one has some glossy and some starstruck. So it's got silver, black, and white in each of those formats, 2 sheets of each. So there's a lot in these to work with, even better than these. And I know Melissa has some, so you're going to have to race me to the shop to see who gets them first. She has some product called Misfits. Misfits, I think, generally come in this size, the 4x6 size, but those are ones that are a little bit flawed. And those you get twice the amount. So instead of 12 sheets, like in each of these packages, you get 24 sheets for the same price. Don't think there's big flaws. I don't know. I haven't had any of those packs yet. But my understanding is they're fairly minor flaws that you can either work around or you can use as part of your design. We all know flaws sometimes work great in a distressed project, and some of those are kind of fun too. So as I mentioned, the paper tears really easily. I'm gonna tear this slowly. If you kind of listen for a minute, you'll almost hear the foil in it. So this paper is made, there's a white core, and then on both sides there's a foil that's bonded to it, and it is a foil. Most of the foils are colored, as you've seen, although there are various ways you can remove color, and we're going to look at those in just a minute. There are a lot of different colors available, and let me just run through some of the scraps that I have over here so that you can look at that. That orange just is darling. I love that. The darker green, there of course is black and a lighter green. There's this lovely purple, a red. I see a pattern in a lot of these in that gold is the back side, so I think you would always have plenty of gold available. The blues are striking. There are several of those that are just gorgeous, and on and on. I don't think there's much left in the pile to show you there. So again, with my cards, I wanted to show you some of the things that you can do with the foils. One thing that I want to show you here real quickly is that punching is just an absolute breeze. So if you like to use punches and you don't so much have the dies, this stuff punches like nothing, like butter. Unfortunately, this is the punch that I had. I don't have a lot of them, because you know I like my dies, but you can see that it cut beautifully. I didn't have to expend any effort, hardly whatsoever, to cut it. It cuts like a breeze. It will make very detailed cuts. This is one that they sent us in a project pack that we worked with a little bit, and you can see how detailed this is. As for what I've cut myself, I reached for a very detailed die when I was going to cut, and that's what resulted in the floral card. So you can see how skinny these stems are and how detailed this die is, and it had no problem whatsoever cutting those out. It's just amazing and so fun. It also embosses beautifully, and I want to show you that because sometimes it seems like behind the scenes maybe we do a lot of extra work with things to make them come out right. In this case, really no. Sorry, again, I'm kind of reaching around in a limited space here trying to find my embossing folder. This is the one that I'm wanting to use is a tailored expression one called Holly. It's a little bit off season, but it's all good. So I'm just going to take my plain foil and put it in the embossing folder. Then make my regular sandwich. This is, I'm using the little texture boutique from Sizzix. So if you've used that, you know, if you don't have a very thick layer, you need to use the shim and that sort of thing. So I'm following that same protocol, but it's really just a matter of crank it through. Sorry, I guess I could crank faster, but I did a little snow shoveling this morning. I hope for you that you've been able to get yourself out, or that someone is coming to help you, because this is a crazy storm and way more than we needed. So once through, very simple. I wasn't struggling to crank this through at all. And look at how gorgeous this is. You can see all of the detail there. Pretty on the front, just as pretty on the back. So I know I can see a lot of applications for this for backgrounds and other types of things. This will work very well. Now, in order to enhance our embossing, we can do sand off the color a little bit. So I've just got a little piece of sandpaper here. I'm going to very lightly bring it against that image. And look how pretty, look how that stands out. So again, I just see a million possibilities with this product, and I haven't even shown you the good parts yet. One thing to keep in mind with this is that when you sand it, there's actually little pieces of color coming off. So you need to wipe this off with a paper towel or something. If you were to try and add an embellishment or a die cut piece, you can see how dirty that is, or something like that. Those little particles may keep it from adhering properly. So just wipe it off and you're done. It's no biggie, but you just want to remember that step. Another way to remove ink, excuse me, from this is to use a product from Rinea called Ghost Ink. Ghost Ink is a lot of fun to use, and there's a lot of different ways to use it. One way is to simply take the pad and run it over the top of your embossing. Now you'll notice my pad looks a little blue. Your ink pad, Ghost Ink pad, will get a little dirty because it's removing color, but that's not a problem. It's normal and it's what it is expected. I just went over this area very lightly with my ink pad because I didn't want to press it underneath. I wanted to keep it to the raised area. If you give it like 5 to 10 seconds, or 10 to 15 seconds maybe is better, it will remove that ink and you can start to remove the excess. To show you, the happy birthday here is done in Ghost Ink. This is just a Concord and 9th stamp that I took, and I put the Ghost Ink pad on like I would any normal ink pad, stamped it onto the foil, waited 10 seconds, and then began to blot it up. With your words and stuff like that, you do want to blot a little bit at first to remove the color, as opposed to dragging across. If you drag across, you might have the problem that, sorry, my fingers are getting a little into this process. It might sort of smear on you, but you can see with this, I just dabbed at it a few times. It removed the color beautifully. I'm going to go ahead and wipe now that I've got most of the excess ink off, and grab the rest of that, and look at how pretty. So this is Ghost Ink, this is sanding. Two different techniques, but both look awesome. And of course, you can take your sandpaper at the edge and do a little distressing and make it look cool. You can see that I did that on this card. So this card, I was looking for the look of beat up metal, and I think I achieved it pretty well. This started out being black. It was embossed with this, I'm not sure what that pattern is called, but I think of it as kind of a shop or garage type metal pattern. And then I used the sandpaper to remove some ink throughout. I went back specifically on the edges, and so you can see my edges are uneven, but they're all pretty silver. So all of the ink is off. And then I even tore it here and folded it up a little bit. I also didn't attach it tight down to my background paper because I wanted that dimension to remain. If I was giving this to somebody who was close to me, where I could just simply hand them the card, the dimension would stay in place probably. I'm not so sure about mailing, but this stuff really holds its curl pretty well. And if you want to see how easy it is to put dimension in something, let me just grab this purple piece here and show you. I'm just going to take one finger and flick up, and it stays. So if you put some effort into giving it dimension, imagine what it will do for you. It's just amazing. For the happy birthday, again, I used the Ghost Ink to stamp that, and then I tore it out of the paper. I went around the edges because I didn't want the white to show so much with a dark gray ink. and then just sort of wiped it off. So I have a little bit of dark gray around the edges, a few brads, and it just really looks like a guy card with very, very minimal effort. So lots of fun for this one, lots of fun techniques. So we know we can tear this stuff and sand this stuff and ghost ink it and all sorts of fun things. This other card that I did, again, I wanted to show you how fine of a die cut it would do, and you can see that through these tiny little stems on the flowers and that sort of thing. My flowers were actually cut from white paper. To add the color, I just used a finger dauber and added the yellow at the top and the green for the stems, and then I went through with my torn edges here on the base and up here with the finger dauber again and just added some green accents. You can do whatever you want to spiff this stuff up. So that was normal dye ink. Any kind you have will probably work. Make sure you give it a minute to let it dry. I'm pretty sure Distress ink will go on and come right back off if it gets wet. I used the Gina K inks, and I had no problem getting it on, but sometimes I was a little over anxious to move on and put together my card, and so I had to go back and re-ink the pieces because I didn't let them dry properly. So do that. I'll point out that my sun here was made using a punch. Again, you saw me use a punch before. I had absolutely no problem with it. Had no problem cutting this out. To make my lower background, I used the textured green paper and just simply ripped it in half. One piece down here, the other piece up there. So there's no magic in that. The top is a little bit interesting, and I want to show you how to do that too. Let me just grab another kind of solid piece here. I need to get something with color. Oops, that one's been, here we go. I think I set this here for a reason. You can literally take this stuff and crumble it up and not have a problem. If you're not careful around the edges, it will start to tear a little bit. Sometimes that's not a problem because it will just add to your overall look. Other times you just want to be kind of careful, but you can see I didn't try and tear it there, but it sure is torn. I've got a pretty wrinkled up piece here. I'm just gonna wrinkle a little bit more in this area because it didn't quite get where I wanted it to be. But I can straighten it back out. It still retains some dimension, which I can keep or I can get rid of. But how I did this background up here is to just use a little bit of ghost ink. Ghost ink also comes in a re-inker form. You'll want to shake that before using it. There's a couple of things you can do. One thing is you can put a little bit of ghost ink out on like your glass mat. Trying to see if I'm on camera here. Yeah, just barely. Okay, so I'm going to put a little bit out on this scratch paper and hope it lasts for a minute for me. You can just kind of dot it around and let it do what it wants to do naturally. Oops, which is make a mess because it wasn't very flat. Shoot. I should have done something different first, but that's okay. You'll get the idea. I'm going to pick a little up with a paintbrush, and there's not going to be enough. Back to the bottle. If I can get enough on my brush, the splatter technique that you've seen so much, you can do that with the ghost ink and just do kind of a splattered background. And you can see that, again, you want to give it about 10 seconds to work its magic before you start dabbing away at the excess. But you can see that I really removed a lot of color here with that first part. this should just be my dabs, and you can see more of that patterned stuff going on that we'd rather see in a background. But again, for what I did up here, I put a little bit of ghost ink on my paper towel, and then I just carefully ran it, and really, I'm saying skimmed it over the top, because you want to try and stick with the top edges and maybe not go down deep in the valleys in removing this stuff. But there's just so many possibilities and so much fun that can be had with it. So you can see where I'm at right now. That would make a really fun background for something. Again, this I did pretty much the same. I just crunched up my background, and I used the ghost ink on a paper towel, and I went ahead and removed some of the color. So that's a really fun part about working with ghost ink with this product. So we can stamp with it, we can run it over embossing, we can run it over the flat paper or crumpled paper to give texture, dimension, wherever I might want to remove ink from something like this, create some little clouds or whatever. There's just a lot of possibilities with the ghost ink too. Can you see some possibilities? I hope you can think about how you might want to play with this too. Here's like the last card I did with it for today. What I did here was just use regular papers and then use a little bit of the foil to jazz it up to make my flowers. Again, these were super easy to die cut. These are a Tim Holtz die. They're the Sizzix Thinlit. I believe it's called Small Tattered Florals. And so you've got a lot of different flowers in here. They're basic flowers, so they work for almost anything. A few leaves, lots of different sizes, so you can pick what you want to do there. These are, I cut some of the bigger ones here. These aren't the biggest, but I tried to stay bigger so that you can see what's going on camera. So with these, they don't need much work. You can remember what we've done in the past trying to give flowers dimension and that sort of thing. But literally with these, you can kind of just take your finger and push down on them in the palm of your hand, and you've got all the dimension you need in a flower. So super, super easy. If I do that with a couple of this and then just sort of offset them and put them together, I'm going to have a really cool flower going on there. And so that's kind of what I did here. I had 3 different sizes that I put together with a stamen, and it worked super, super easy. It also works very easy for these rolled flowers. If you've tried to do these in the past, you know that they can be a bit of a bear. I've sort of wimped out in my later years, so I'm reaching for my quilling tool here. But in a lot of cases, I don't even use one. I'm just going to roll these up quickly, and I'm going to worry about adding dimension later on after the flower is formed. I don't have to do that from the start. The only thing I have to watch is what you have to watch always doing these flowers, and just kind of make sure that the petals don't stack on top of each other, that they kind of wrap around and they offset one another. Pardon my slow wrapping here and my inky fingers, because working with this stuff all day, I've kind of gotten a little bit inky, but that's okay too. It's part of the fun. I'm going to take that off the quilling tool at this point and reach for a glue dot for my base, because I'm about ready to put that together. These glue dots are not my friend today for some reason. I'm not sure why. We're going to try and get through the rest with minimal problem. So I'm going to keep rolling, rolling, rolling until I get to that center part, and can flip that back around and just sort of take in the flower. This one's going to be fairly tight, but I have plenty of ability to just flip it open. And it ends up being kind of a cute little rolled flower. You can see that. Again, if I had more time and patience right now, I would have done a better job for you. But again, it's super, super easy to make those, to roll them. You can shape them very easily. I can create a bend there and it'll stay. I can create a bend here and it'll stay. So it's nice having the foil as your backup when working even with these little boogers, because it's a little easier to roll. You get a nicer result in the end, and then you can always go back after everything's said and done and your flower's theoretically finished and keep picking at it to make it look just like you want it to look. So it works very well, again, with those fine details. This is a leaf that I cut. You can see, even though that's got these tiny little jaggedy edges on the side, it picked up all that detail, so nothing is missing. What you can see with this is it also picks up the detail from the die. This is a die that happened to be open in that center part, and so you can see how it picked up and created more dimension on that leaf just based on a normal die opening. So sometimes you have to watch those things too. There may be things you don't want to see that way. Lots and lots of fun. I'm trying to think what I've forgotten to tell you about it. The only thing that I'm thinking of that we do a lot that may not work quite so well with the foil is heat embossing. This paper is created through a heat process. So they start out with a white inner paper, and through a heat bonding process, they add the foil on the two sides. So if you're heat embossing, and we all have a tendency to go too far with that, you can actually pull the paper apart literally by doing that. You can separate the layers. So if you do want to heat emboss on it, you're going to want to heat it, back off for a bit, heat it again, back off for a bit. So it's going to take you longer. You're going to have to be much more careful. Probably better to just not heat emboss it. But again, there's so many other choices. I think you'll be okay. You absolutely can stamp on it. You're going to want stays on or archival ink or something like that that's good for slippery surfaces. You're gonna want to be careful how you stamp. If you're a smasher, if you stamp down and smash things, you might blur it very easily on this, because again, it's a smooth, shiny surface. It's not like paper, it's not porous. So the ink won't sink in. It's going to sit on top until it dries out. So you have to be careful with that. When you remove your stamp, gotta be careful how you do that and everything else. Let it dry fully, which means up and back. It's not going to dry quickly for you, unfortunately. But you absolutely can stamp on it. I think I had an example here where I stamped. It's a very small stamp, so it's kind of hard to see, especially with the glare, but you can kind of make out the happy birthday there. That's stamped, I believe, in archival ink. So it's possible to stamp on it, not really a problem, but you do have to let it dry. Just in the interest of fairness and full disclosure, you need a few minutes practiced with the ghost ink. I was trying to use that same happy birthday stamp on this piece of embossed paper, and I had the worst time. You can see that's probably the best I did down here, but it's hard to bring out that detail. Ghost ink is not a detailed ink to be using on anything. But my point is, practice with a couple of things before you stamp on something really good. because it's an acquired knowledge, it's just going to take you a little bit of, oh, okay, that's how it works. You won't have a problem with it. You just need to put in that work. So we can stamp on it, we can cut it, we can punch it, we can emboss it. There are just so many things. You can rip it. A very fun product to work with. Again, once this snowstorm clears us a little bit and the roads open up a little bit, y'all have to race me to Bayer's to get some and try it out, because I really think you're gonna like it. I think you'll find a lot of different applications. Again, my cards weren't designed to inspire you to make these particular cards, but rather just to show you some of the things that you can do with this fun product. Thanks for watching today, and be safe out there, okay? Talk to you soon. Bye.